Debbie from Line Doodle Design, and today for my Doodling with Debbie feature for Stencil Stamp, I'm creating this quick and easy wedding card using the gorgeous circular lace stencil and my favourite embossing paste. This card was inspired by one I created way back in 2013. I'd seen embossing paste used in mixed media and wanted to try it for card making. At the time there weren't many stencils and I created a DIY stencil by die cutting card. Now, 4 years later, we have a wonderful array of stencils available, and I'm still very much in love with swiping embossing paste through a stencil as I was then. My favourite embossing paste is this one by Debby. I started using it 4 years ago and really haven't felt the need to search for alternatives as I love this one so much. I've placed a panel of basil marshmallow card on my work surface. I like this particular card as the white is very similar to the white of the embossing paste. You could tape the card and stencil to your work surface, but I'm simply holding it in place with my hand while I quickly swipe the embossing paste over it with a palette knife. Once you get the first swipe of the paste on, it pretty much holds itself in place after that. I'm concentrating the paste to the centre of the stencil and not trying to control too much where the paste goes. I want a nice focal point on the centre of the card, but one which looks organic as it fades out towards the edges. I still love when you lift the stencil to reveal the design. I did have a couple of bits of embossing paste off to one side, which I lifted with the knife while it was still wet. And then I gently dried the paste with a heat tool, keeping the heat tool not too close and moving the heat tool around lots so as not to scorch the paste or cause it to bubble up. Now that the paste is touch dry, I'm going to add some gold details using Heidi Swap's Colour Shining Gold. This is another long-term favourite of mine and I often use this to splatter gold droplets on a project. For today, I'm starting off by shaking the bottle to make sure all the gold sparkle was mixed through, and then I'm using my finger to dab the gold onto the paste. Again, I'm trying to keep things loose and random and not overthinking it too much. I want the gold to cover some of the paste, but also to seep down into the gaps too. If you don't have this spray, then a gold paint would work equally well. Just make sure to have a relatively thick consistency to ensure you get maximum sparkle. I used paint on the original card that inspired today's project. Now that I've got a fair amount of gold detailing on the paste, I'm finishing off with a good splatter of the gold spray too, and then setting the panel off to the side to dry while I work on the other elements. I adore the new wonky hearts and wonky rectangle dies that have just been released. The random stitch details around the edges of these dies really suits the card, and so I've chosen the smallest of the wonky hearts dies and I'm going to die cut that from some Stencil Stamp vellum. And then while I'm die cutting, I'm also going to die cut the Love die from Die Cuts with a View Gold Glitter card. Now that the design is starting to come together, I'm going to cut the panel with one of the wonky rectangle dies. And I'm just trying to decide which die to go for. I often like smaller 4-bar size cards, and so was tempted with a smaller die. However, I felt the larger die gave the elements more white space and breathing room, so I was drawn to the focal point more. And so I used that die to die cut the panel. I did make a mistake at this point though, as it turns out the gold spray I'd applied wasn't totally dry and some of the spray I did to the cutting plate. So I got the spray out again and touched up where the gold was removed. I learned from my mistake and made sure after this second application to dry the spray before moving on. I'd already cut the die cuts for the focal point but wanted to add one more element, and that was the Forever and Always sentiment from the Floral Bliss stamp set. I lined up the sentiment in the Mini Misty along with a black scrap of card and then treated the card with the powder tool. This will help prevent stray embossing powder sticking to the card. I then stamped the sentiment a couple of times with clear embossing ink to get a good impression and sprinkled on white embossing powder before heat setting. I like to trim sentiments like this to a skinny banner and I thought I'd show you how I do that. I have an old clear ruler with a metal edge and looking at this video it needs a good clean. The transparency of the ruler and the grid lines on it means it's easy to line up to ensure a straight cut. I use this ruler along with a scalpel, and just recently I found the pen blade set of knives which I'm enjoying using. They have a nice appealing design along with a mechanism where you can extend and retract the blade for safety. Using a cutting mat so as not to score into my work surface, and then holding the ruler in place with one hand and the pen blade in the other, I take a couple of cuts with the blade along the metal edge of the ruler. It's better, I find, to use a couple of light cuts than try and press too firmly, which may push the ruler out of place. I find this method gives great results with a nice clean edge perfectly aligned to the sentiment. It's also very easy to go back in and trim a slither more off the edge if need be, something I've always struggled with when using a paper trimmer. Now with all the elements ready, it's simply a case of putting the card together. I've added foam adhesive to the back of the panel, and as I was doing so I ran out of foam adhesive, so I thought I'd share another tip, and that's how I refill my foam adhesive roll. I like to use the 3M foam adhesive, which comes on a ginormous roll. Great value for money, but a little unwieldy. So when it gets to the end of the roll, I keep the inner cardboard ring and then thread some of the new roll onto the old ring. This way I get the added value of the big roll, but with the convenience of a smaller roll. I've added foam adhesive to the back of the gold love die cut, and then using my grid mat to make sure I align it straight on top of the vellum heart. Once the love die cut is in place, I can now hide foam adhesive on the back of the vellum where the love die cut will hide it when viewed from the front. This way I get to add some dimension to the vellum piece, but don't have to worry about the adhesive being visible. With the vellum heart and love die cut now in place, I can add the sentiment strip on top, again with more foam adhesive. Because the vellum layer is already mounted on foam adhesive, and then the sentiment strip mounted on top, where the end pieces of the strip stick out, they need an extra layer of foam adhesive too, to ensure the strip is mounted at the same level throughout. I then added an extra piece of foam adhesive to support the vellum heart, hiding it beneath the sentiment strip so it wouldn't be visible. I've cut and scored a side-folding A2 card from More of the Marshmallow card and then added the panel on top with foam adhesive. One last thing I wanted to add was some gold sequins dotted around, and I found some lovely small ones in the Stencil Stamp Sweet 16 pack, as well as some larger ones from Lucy's Cards. And that completes this quick and easy wedding card using the gorgeous circular lace stencil and embossing paste highlighted with gold. Hopefully you can see here all the lovely texture on the background. On the Stencil Stamp blog you will find a coordinating blog post as well as details of the supplies I've used today. If you want to find me, I blog over at limedoodledesign.com. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.